Live from Sister Basebone Studios. Holistic Alchemy is a healing company providing conversations, consultations, coaching, and other services to promote positive, liberating, and sustainable self-care practices. Welcome to Holistically Speaking. I am Ialami. I am the founder and visionary of Holistic Alchemy. I am a body liberation and self-care coach and sound healer. This podcast is centered around conversations for women, Black women, around self-love, self-care, and well-being. And today, we're going to talk about nappy hair. That beautiful, thick, nappy hair. That hair that hasn't been straightened or permed or curled or dyed and covered up. Nappy hair. That Bantu knot, sister lock, corn roll, afro wearing, natural nappy hair wearing, that is. We're going to talk about how, as of February 18th, 2019, sisters in the Big Apple, New York City, New York, can, and I quote, rightfully don their natural styles without fear of discrimination. So here's what the law says about those in New York City. Natural hair, treated or untreated hairstyles such as locks, cornrows, twists, braids, Bantu knots, fades, afros, and have the right to keep hair in an uncut or untrimmed state. Now, I want to read a little bit from the New York Times article that I pulled back on February the 18th. So it says, under new guidelines to be released this week by the New York City Commission on Human Rights, the targeting of people based on their hair or hairstyle at work, school, or in public spaces will now be considered racial discrimination. The change in law applies to anyone in New York City, but is aimed at remedying the disparate treatment of Black people. The guidelines specifically mention the right of New Yorkers to maintain their natural hair, treated or untreated, hairstyles such as locks, cornrows, twist braids, Bantu knots, fades, afros, and or the right to keep hair in an uncut or untrimmed state. In practice, the guidelines give legal recourse to individuals who have been harassed, threatened, punished, demoted, or fired because of the style and the texture of their hair. The City Commission can levy penalties up to $250,000 on defendants that are found in violation of the guidelines, and there's no cap on damages. The Commission can also force internal policy changes and rehirings at offended institutions. So this, I want to skip down because it's a lot of information, but I highly encourage you to check out. This was like I said, an article from the New York Times dated February the 18th. But I want to get down to the part where it says, but New York City's Human Rights Commission is one of the most progressive in the nation. It recognizes many more areas of discrimination than federal law, including employment, housing, pregnancy, and marital status. Its legal enforcement bureau can conduct investigations and has the ability to subpoena witnesses and prosecute violations. Quote unquote, there's nothing keeping us from calling out these policies prohibiting natural hair or hairstyles most closely associated with Black people, said Carmelyn Malice, the commissioner and chairwoman of the New York City Commission on Human Rights. They are based on racist standards of appearance, Ms. Malice, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Malalis continued, saying that they perpetuate racist stereotypes that say Black hairstyles are unprofessional or improper. Well, let's talk about nappy hair. As I put my hands through my nappy hair. I'm loving my nappy hair. And so, but I want to go back to what the commissioner said and chairwoman said that the rules that have been in place were based on racist standards of appearance. Racist stereotypes that say black hairstyles are unprofessional or improper. So, you see, the fact that she says unprofessional or improper, when I read that, of course, I began to think, who are those folks that wrote that law, that put that into effect, that these hairstyles, these black hairstyles, that is, are unprofessional, improper? Well, I would venture to say we know who they are, right? And see, these stereotypes perpetuate negative ideas about people, groups of people. And more times than not, those stereotypes are inflicted upon marginalized groups of people. And those stereotypes, and we can think about so many stereotypes that have been passed down literally for 400 years about black people, right? And those stereotypes have been crafted by the majority. Those stereotypes have been based on a lot. And I will not go into that right now, but I want to say that these stereotypes are harmful, as we know, because what happens is that some people begin to internalize these stereotypes. Internalization of stereotypes disturbs a person's mental psyche. So you probably say, okay, Falami, why are you talking about this? Where are you going with this? What does this have to do with what you're talking about, right? So, well, internalization of stereotypes that were created to separate people by class, race, gender, body type, sexual orientation, et cetera, are harmful for the mental, or for people of color, for marginalized groups of people. It is impactful on a person's mental well-being. And so as a holistic wellness practitioner, as someone who is a body liberation coach who talks about self-care, we got to get this internalized oppression, this internalization stuff up and out and talked about. And so some of us have internalized those stereotypes about our natural hair. And thus we have done certain things so that we can acculturate, so that we can assimilate, so that we can fit in, so that we will not be ostracized. So Dr. Jeanette Taylor, author of the article Colonizing Images and Diagnostic Labels, had this to say: if African American women internalize detrimental, dominant images and messages in their self-image or self-concept, they incur an identity that negates value of self. Let me read that one more again. If African American women internalize detrimental, dominant images and messages in their self-image or self-concept, they incur an identity that negates value of self. So I want you to just sit on that for a minute. No, actually a second. So if Black women are not able to wear the hair that connects to themselves, who they are, that's in their DNA, their culture, it can impact their what? Their value of self. So what you may ask, how does this has to do with self-love, self-care, and well-being. So my wife was fired from the Dallas Police Department in 2001 for wearing her locked hair. At that time, the fight to wear one's natural hair was much harder than it is today. Now, even though we've seen situations again and again where our natural hair is being challenged, and unfortunately, it's being seen even at the elementary level. there is a case, and I'm not sure right now, and that's something I probably should, and I'll follow up on a situation in Texas of a young girl who was in the news for being told something about her natural hair. And again, I'll have to get more, but this just came to my mind now thinking about this. So the question that bold some discussion with this new law in New York City, the Big Apple, will more African American women to start to wear their natural tresses? And then how many other cities will follow suit? And then here, more importantly, what kind of implicit bias or diversity training or microaggression training will be instituted as a result of this new law? So, because what I'm saying is, despite the law on the books, there are always ways in which folks can avert or make the law not applicable to them and justify unjust practices. So, for example, and then also, they can continue to those who don't want to abide by the law. They can slip some microaggression statements or comments that are offensive to those that wear their natural hair. So like I said, let me go back and read these questions that I think that bode some reflection and some thought process about how many other cities will follow suit. And will more African American men start to wear their natural tresses? Well, more so women. And then what kind of implicit bias or quote unquote diversity training, microaggression training will organizations put in place as a result of this new law? Okay. So, for example, a person might decide that a sister of who has a natural hair should not be hired as a receptionist because he or she locks or has cornrows. Or maybe a person who has a qualified sister with a natural hairstyle might not be hired, but is legitimized by saying the person, quote unquote, wasn't qualified. Whatever the case may be, I think the city of New York is making a positively progressive step in the right direction, an example for other cities. I believe it's important to have discussion in larger spaces about the hegemonic Eurocentric ideologies that make this continued conversation around our hair, our skin, our body, all of that, that needs to be discussed. In the past 3 months, the national news has spotlighted some horrific incidents where children have been forced to cut their locks. The most recent case was the incident at a New Jersey high school where there was a young brother who was set to wrestle, and a referee told him to cut off his dreadlocks or forfeit the match. This is an atrocity. I mean, the teen obliged, but what kind of mental trauma this young man endured, and what residuals will in years to come of him cutting his hair, and it went viral. I mean, everybody saw it. So just think about that. I mean, I would hope that a professional, a psychologist of color would take his case on pro bono and say, look, brother, you're going to need some support as you have been, vilified really on national, and I'm assuming national, international news about your hair being who you are, all for the win of a wrestling match. See, the conversations here on Holistically Speaking are meant to raise awareness, hoping to enlighten you, to inspire you, to raise your level of consciousness. And because it's really about loving yourself as is, loving your body as is. And doing so, you promote a positive well-being for yourself. And it is really self-care at its best. Now, trust and believe, it takes time. You need support. Some of you might need a tribe. You might need to get together with your sisters. I have a sister circle. The sister circle is a way to support each other. So what do you do? And my producer just shared with me that the New York City's mayor, the wife, Charlene McCray, she's a sister, and she has locks. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So there we have the advocate there. There we have most definitely the one who is I would assume rallying our cause. And is at the table. And that's why it's so important for those of us who have locks, who are natural hair wearing, are at those tables where we can have our voice be heard. Right? So this goes with what do you do with this information that I shared with you today? One, you educate yourself about the beauty and magnitude of styles and creative expression in natural hair. So maybe you have not embraced natural hair before. Maybe this is a time to start to look into the history and the beauty and the magnitude of styles and creative expressions that are found in our natural hair. It's funny. My children were talking yesterday. We were talking about this curl pattern. Now, I'm like, what do I need to know about my curl pattern for, right? And they're trying to tell me, F3, F2, F1, something like this. Okay, whatever. But at least now that I think of it is a way in which to get closer to your hair, to understanding the type of texture you have. And then, okay, well, I can wear that puff. So my daughter, she wears a puff on her head, right? And she's like, I'm a F3. Okay, whatever that means. But she educated me on the different curl patterns of your hair. And that was pretty cool. And so anyway, that's something that you might want to do. And so there's much information about the different curl patterns and understanding your hair on YouTube and such. So anyway, what else do you do with this information? Maybe join or start a natural hair group to affirm your beauty and share practices for handling or challenging situations with others about your hair. See, sisters, I know that some of you are saying, I can't do that natural hair because I like to go work out and I don't want to. Hey, it's my belief, we need to move beyond. I can't have natural hair because I like to work out and I get my hair sweaty and nappy. What's wrong with nappy hair? Where does that come from? And that's whole different ideologies. That's ideologies that have been passed down from generations to generations. What else can you do with this information that we're talking about today? Call out people and institutions that downgrade and employ discrimination. So again, having a seat at the table. Then I want you to check your own biases. And actually, that should be first. Quite honestly, check your own biases about natural hair wearing sisters and brothers. Where does this come from? Why do you believe that? Okay. So then align yourself with people who are like you. So when I've been natural for, oh my gosh, over 20 plus years. More than that, I would say probably close to 30 years. And I read books and I immersed myself with different material to kind of get familiar with natural hair. And then I really started connecting with folks who had natural hair. And then listen to songs that affirm your natural beauty. One of my favorites is Hair by India Ari. And, the song she talks about, I am not my hair, right? So again, these are ways in which you can begin to embrace your natural hair, your natural beauty. Join a group, start a group. Really begin to unpack your biases. And then, and there's another thing that you can also do. There is and if you have children and grandchildren and nieces, there is a wonderful book called Happy to Be Nappy. And Happy to Be Nappy is a wonderful book and an expression of beauty of our nappy hair. And that's by Bell Hooks. Happy to Be Nappy. So I have given you a lot today. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. I'm passionate about you and us and we being holistically well and practicing sustainable self-care. So I invite you to share this podcast and share it with your sister, sister, friend, your mother, daughter, niece, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Holistic Alchemy. And I hope you return again as we will talk all things holistically speaking, well-being, self-care, and self-love for Black women. Until next time, this is Ialami.